Hello and welcome to Senior Speak New Hampshire on your Concord TV, sponsored by AARP. I am Karen Ulmer Dorsch, the producer host of this program and also a volunteer for AARP. And I thank you for being with us today. Many of you viewers are aware that AARP Speakers Bureau has a host of presentations that we offer organizations and groups free of charge. We have teams of presenters who are delighted in informing and educating our audiences about issues that promote the health, the wealth, and the self of our 50-plus generation and assist them in living active, productive, and fulfilling lives as they age. This year, the AARP nationally has partnered with the American Red Cross to educate and inform our audiences about how to be prepared to meet disasters when they happen. This is our newest presentation, and I'm delighted to say that it has been in great demand all across our state. And because of this interest, I invited Stephanie Couturier, the New England Regional Red Cross CEO, to join us today to talk about her role as the Regional Chief Executive Officer, and also the challenges that Red Cross faces in meeting its goals to assist those in need, and why personal readiness is so important as we face disasters. Okay, so Stephanie, thank you sincerely for being with us today. People, this woman is one busy, busy lady, and it is really our benefit that she is here with us today. Let's begin by having you tell us, the viewers, a little bit about yourself, your role as Chief Executive Officer, how you prepared for this, and how long you've been in this position.
Wonderful. Well, Karen, thank you so much again for this invitation. I'm honored to be joining you today, and we're so grateful for the partnership that we have built with AARP over the past few months. So thank you for this opportunity. My name is Stephanie Couturier, as you mentioned, and I serve as the Regional Chief Executive Officer for the American Red Cross. I've been in this role now for about 3 years, but I've been proudly serving the American Red Cross for 12 years in total.
Wow.
The majority of those 12 years was in our fundraising capacity. I served as our Chief Development Officer.
Okay.
And I ran our small but mighty fundraising ship, supporting our mission response and ensuring that those efforts were made possible by generous donors right here in New Hampshire.
Right. Okay. So the fundraising component, talk a little bit about that and where the dollars go.
Yes. So 90 cents of every dollar donated to the American Red Cross goes back into ensuring our mission happens in our local communities. So when someone makes a gift to the Red Cross, that gift goes right to work following home fires, ensuring blood is available on hospital shelves, right? When you think about all the things that the Red Cross does, every dollar that we raise here in New Hampshire goes back into that mission service delivery in the community. And, you know, a lot of people think about the big bad Red Cross brand, right? We're part of a national organization, yet we're not federally funded on the local level to do the work. So we depend on the generosity of our New Hampshire residents, foundations, corporations to really make that mission happen. So every dollar counts, and we wouldn't be able to do the work that we do without those donated dollars and the generosity of our volunteers who give of themselves day in and day out to ensure the mission happens. So,
you know, that was something, I knew that Red Cross was donation funded, but every time I hear about, every time a disaster strikes and you hear Red Cross is there, all of a sudden I thought to myself, gosh, how do they do what they do when they don't get when you don't get outside assistance, but you operate totally from donations. That's mind-boggling.
It 12 years, and it still humbles me and gives me goosebumps to think about how we make this mission possible, how we help people in times of need. Our mission is to mobilize the power of our volunteers and the generosity of our donors in the face of emergency. And so when you hear about those large-scale disasters across the country, we're also helping here at the local level. We are deploying volunteers and staff, people power, on the ground in those impacted areas to work in shelters, to do mobile feeding in the impacted areas, to do damage assessment on the ground. So there's a lot of work that goes into the responses, and our New Hampshire residents raise their hands time and time again to deploy. Those deployments are a minimum of a 2-week period. So again, they're dedicating their time, talent, and treasure, really the humanitarian spirit, right, to help people who are in need. The other resources that we provide from a local level are our fleet assets. So we have emergency response vehicles locally. Should something major happen here in New Hampshire, we can respond accordingly. But these vehicles can also be deployed to impacted areas to do that mobile feeding, where you have this big vehicle that can hold Cambros, that can hold food, plates, you name it, and we lift up the window and we can do that mobile feeding in the impacted areas. So a lot of resources from right here in New Hampshire actually go to where this response is needed across the country. And that response is happening more and more and more often given what's in front of us with climate change.
Right. Talk a little bit about that,
So
Stephanie.
when you look at, the course of, say, a 10-year span, as the Red Cross, as a country, we were looking at a $1 billion disaster maybe less than a handful of times a year, right? In the last 5 years, that has increased, and we are now in a year that we've never seen before. We heard the word unprecedented so much last year during hurricane season, and yet the disasters continue. The flooding and the winter storms in California, right? The tornadoes in Missouri and Arkansas. Our spring right now has been a disaster response season like we've never seen before, and so that drains on our people power, it drains on our supplies and our readiness opportunity, and it also depletes our financial reserve and what we can expend on those disasters. So there's a lot going on.
Right. Currently, how many forces are out of state?
Out of state, we have about 15 folks who are deployed. Almost on a daily basis, I get a new email update that we have, a new volunteer or a new staff member who's heading out the door in the next day or two. So we're continuing to be called upon, again, right now it's Missouri and Arkansas and California are our major response efforts where we have shelters open, and we still have hundreds of individuals and families who are seeking shelter in our Red Cross shelters because they've been displaced because of these natural disasters.
Right. Okay. So, day-to-day work. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So here at home, the Red Cross is very active. Again, when you think about the Red Cross brand, many people think about blood donation first and foremost, right?
Right.
What we call our silent disasters here at home are local home fires and multifamily apartment fires. And so I serve all 3 states, Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont, but across those 3 states, our workforce is responding to a home fire about every 17 hours.
Wow.
And how that works is we're dispatched by local emergency management and fire departments. Our volunteers and our staff are to respond within 2 hours of being dispatched. And so we go to the scene, we meet with the clients. A lot of times we're giving them blankets because they're coming out of their home with nothing, right? So we are that kind of immediate sign of hope and recovery when they're seeing their home being burned down.
So Stephanie, when this happens, it's the fire people that contact you?
Yes.
Okay.
And so that's where our local relationships with fire departments are so important. These are things that we're working to strengthen and build on a day-to-day basis behind the scenes. So that's what our volunteers and our staff do day to day. But when they are called to respond, part of that immediate comfort and care involves potentially putting these individuals and families up in hotel rooms if they don't have a place to stay. We provide financial assistance depending on the need, right? Each fire is assigned trained caseworkers to meet with the clients and talk about what are their immediate emergent needs, right? If they've lost their medications, their glasses, their dentures, oxygen in the fire, we work with pharmacies and healthcare agencies to ensure that those prescriptions are ready and can be refilled so that those clients don't go, their immediate emergent needs are being met. And so the Red Cross is responsible for that short-term recovery period.
So it's a volunteer that's meeting with these individuals to get this organized.
Yes.
So that means that the volunteers have had a lot of training.
Yes. So we operate, so I manage all 3 states. We have 45 full-time employees and we have over 1,600 volunteers.
Wow.
So we are driven by our volunteer power.
Okay. Yeah.
And these volunteers, they take trainings. There's a variety of different tracks that volunteers can take, whether it's a lot of retired nurses go into disaster mental health. We have a critical care team that talks with families who may have encountered a fatality, a death from a home fire. And so that requires a specific track of trainings because you're meeting with families at a very fragile time.
So a volunteer who comes to you and says, I want to volunteer for Red Cross, they can choose the choice of
pick your adventure, right? There's a lot of opportunity. You can deploy for 2 weeks in those disaster affected areas. You can help us here at home during home fires, become client casework, become disaster mental health workers. We need logistics volunteers to ensure that our inventory and our fleet are where they need to be across the region. So there's a variety of skills and experiences that align nicely with the work that we look for in volunteers.
And what would be the median age, more or less, of people that
typically
volunteer?
We have retired volunteers who can dedicate a fair amount of their time. A lot of times we have couples come to us, right? And we actually have couples who deploy together, who work together. But we also have a fairly robust group of youth. So we have youth clubs in area high schools and colleges in New Hampshire. Right, we want to keep that pipeline going, but I would say that the median age is probably in your 60 to 70 range.
But it would be also a wonderful project for high school students have projects, and that would be a really great project for them.
Most of our youth and high school clubs start with a blood drive at their school. And then the more that they get to know about the work of the Red Cross, again, pick your own adventure. What are they passionate about? How do they want to get involved? There's a number of different doors that you can walk in when you become a Red Cross volunteer, which is pretty exciting and interesting.
Absolutely. Of course it would be. Okay. So talk a little bit about how climate challenge has increased your responsibilities.
So we talked a little bit earlier, Karen, about just the number and the scale of devastation that we're seeing from these natural disasters on a more regular basis than ever before.
And so, more intense.
More intense. So again, that's depleting resources.
Sure.
So the organization is really taking a look at, where are our key priorities in the months and years ahead. We need to build stronger partnerships at the local grassroots level so that like organizations are coming together and really talking about, what if the big one were to hit New Hampshire? Are we prepared? Are we ready? Do we have the resources in
Yeah.
place? So the community partnership piece is one pillar. The other piece is capacity building, bringing in new volunteers, getting them trained and ready.
Right.
So when the next one hits, we have, some fresh, not bodies, some bench strength, I'll
Right.
say, to respond to those disasters, because our people are getting tired, right? There's such a thing as disaster fatigue,
Oh,
both
boy.
for financial donors and for volunteers who are giving their time on these
course.
responses. And so capacity building with people power is another key priority that the organization is looking at right now.
So I had a question now, and I'm trying to think of what it was, because it fit right into that. Well, let's move on, and maybe it'll come back.
Yeah.
Okay, talk about what individuals can do to ease up the burden of a volunteer who is coming after a disaster has struck. In other words, or even before, what can a person do to prepare for a disaster that will ease this whole process of once it does happen?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Talk a little bit
I
about
think,
that.
Karen, there's really 3 calls to action or opportunities that I'd love for folks to take away from this conversation. And that first piece that I think you're alluding to is really being personally prepared, right?
Right.
Part of what the Red Cross does on a day-to-day basis is preparedness trainings, making sure that our communities are more resilient in the face of emergencies and disasters. And so this is where the AARP partnership
Right.
came in. We're now talking and getting out into our communities, talking about emergency preparedness, having a plan should an emergency be coming. What do you have in your go kit? How much water do you have on hand?
Do you have a go kit?
Do you have a go kit? Do you have working flashlights? Things that we take for granted in the traditional day-to-day.
Yeah.
Really just bringing home that whole community preparedness and resilience. Along the same lines, we also have an arm of preparedness for home fire. Having that 2-minute escape plan should you as an individual or your family experience a home fire.
Right.
Where is your family meeting spot? How would you get out? Do you have multiple points of egress from whatever location you are in your home in the event of a home fire? And so these trainings are all free. You can go on our website and request a free training. The website is redcross.org/NNE, as in Northern New England. There's a lot of information there about how to be prepared in the event of a disaster or a home fire. So I would
Okay.
definitely encourage folks to kind of take that piece into their own hands, research on our website, reach out for a training, maybe even contact a local AARP through the Speakers Bureau series.
Sure.
See where there's a training going on. But get prepared, I think, is a really great step.
Right. And the AARP, we call them DIYs, but the AARP program that we present goes through what people need in their to-go bag and how many to-go bags do they need.
Yes.
And, it's really extensive. It really gives the viewers information that is very helpful. And I think it's important when people hear this, because there's a lot of preparation that one needs to do.
Yes.
And I think it's really important for people to understand this is a process. You don't get it all together all at once. You work on it a little bit at a time
build
so
your
that
kit
you've
as you
got
go.
it. Right. And I just found that just really, we at AARP took the training in order to give the presentation that we give. And it is very thorough. It's very wonderful as far as helping people know what they need to do. And if residents or if people did those things, that would make it so much easier once disaster strikes for
That
the Red
community
Cross to
resiliency,
come in
right?
and
Yes.
do what they need to do to
Exactly.
help.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
The other piece, Karen, that I think, again, taking action is the volunteer piece. If you have some time to give, we're always looking for new volunteers to join our workforce and be a part of our mission, as little as a few hours a week to as much as you can give. We talked about all the opportunities there are to get involved, and so if that's something that folks would be interested in, I would definitely encourage you to sign up
Right.
and
if
to
a person
explore the volunteer piece.
Right. If a person wants to volunteer but doesn't really want to be in the thick of, are there things they can do?
Yes. Well, so we've talked a lot about disaster. On the blood donation side, we're always looking for volunteers to go to our blood drives and register blood donors.
Yeah.
So check people in as they're coming to donate blood. Welcome them. Be that donor ambassador
Right.
after they donate blood, showing them to the canteen area. So that's a really easy way to get involved as well if you don't like
Exactly.
being woken up at 2:00 in the morning to go to a home fire.
Right.
You could volunteer sometime at local blood drives. We also have various opportunities within just our general volunteer base. If you like social media or writing, we have volunteers in our communications space or marketing. We have opportunities in our office for general office and administrative work. So it kind of runs the gamut again in terms of opportunities. They're pretty endless.
Okay. Now, your office is located here in Concord.
It is, yes.
So how do people in the North Country connect with you? How does that work?
So most of our volunteers that come to us from the North Country are in fact those disaster responders. We have different teams of volunteers throughout the state, right? If we're looking to be able to respond within 2 hours, we depend on volunteers in those local areas to be our ambassadors and our representatives who are going to those home fires. However, with COVID, the hybrid world that we now live in, there's many more virtual volunteer opportunities than ever before. So, right, which is a wonderful thing, but also, it's not for everyone.
Right.
If people are looking for that connection and that network,
Right.
A virtual volunteer opportunity is likely not for you.
Right.
But they're out there.
Okay. Tell me about a virtual volunteer. What would a person do as a virtual volunteer?
So I think one good example of that, Karen, would be in our communications function. Again, kind of if you're interested in writing, we have a blog. We're always looking for people who have Red Cross stories. And all of that can be done in a virtual setting. You can do an interview now over the computer, and you could type up that Red Cross story, and it could go right up to our blog. We also now have a Veterans History Project, where we're looking to meet veterans who are willing to just share their story of their service.
Right.
And these stories get written up, and they go to our National Red Cross office. The Red Cross was born on the battlefield through Clara Barton.
Oh, yes,
helping
of course,
injured service members on the battlefield. And so that continues to be embedded in our mission work. And so that Veterans History Project is another example of something that likely could be done in a virtual setting.
Right. And certainly veterans, if you have stories that you would like to have share, I think that would just be a wonderful, wonderful gift for people to know and to have. Well, that's a great, that's a great project.
That was newly reinvigorated in the past few months. And so there is a part on our website, again, redcross.org/NNE, that there's a click for Veterans History Project, and you can go right in there, sign up, and we'll come to you and interview you for your story.
Okay, so there is a very direct connection with Red Cross and veterans.
There is.
That's great to know.
So this day and age, when we think about our service members and their families, the Red Cross is the only, we're congressionally chartered to provide emergency communication 24/7. Should an emergency happen here at home and a loved one's family member be serving overseas, the Red Cross provides that information to the commanding officer to get that soldier back. So you think of a death in the family that's coming, or a birth.
Right.
The Red Cross provides that emergency communication.
Oh, that's
overseas.
wonderful.
Isn't that pretty amazing? Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I hope that veterans are aware that they have a good friend in the American Red Cross.
They sure do.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So, getting involved. How do people, do they just contact you, or just
Yes.
how
I think we will have a slide up here. We have our address listed there, our phone number. If you call our phone number, there's a phone tree with all of the various lines of service that you could get involved in. So just pick, again, choose your own adventure wherever you'd like to go. If you want more information, you can leave a message and someone from our team will get back to you. Or go right to our website and kind of just explore what's out there, because there's a wealth of information about the work of the Red Cross right here in New Hampshire that you can learn about.
So you did mention that home fires are one of the things that you're very active in. We've just recently had a lot of rain. Was there flooding that you needed to do anything with, or?
So knocking on wood, right, Karen? You never know. We were looking at all the river gauges. We work in close partnership with the state, right?
Yeah.
The local emergency operations center, should something be happening here in New Hampshire. And so we kept really close eyes on there. Luckily, we were fortunate that we didn't have to respond. Yes, there was some flooding. There were some roadways that were washed away and that sort of thing. But there were not large pockets of areas where homes were damaged or impacted by the flooding.
How grateful can we be, huh? Because you're busy everywhere else.
Right.
Stephanie, thank you so very much for
it was a
this.
pleasure.
And viewers, please share this information with your loved ones who might not be able to watch this particular program, but let them know that the American Red Cross is at their disposal, but we would love to have them also be a part of that organization. So until the next time, be good, do good, be one.